The night was cold, the forest was silent, except for the sound of broken metal and the crack of small fires. A ship had fallen from the sky only hours ago, and now it lay across the dark ground like the body of a dead giant. Pieces of steel were scattered everywhere, glowing red from the crash. The air smelled of smoke and strange alien oil. A lone man walked among the wreck. He was tired, his boots heavy, his breath slow. He was just a traveler, no soldier, no hero, only a man who had been passing through this lonely world. But when the ship came down from the sky, he could not look away. Something inside told him to go and see. Something inside told him someone might need help. He held a small light in his hand. The beam cut through the smoke, showing broken walls and melted glass. At first he thought everyone must be dead. The crash was too violent, the fire too strong, but then he heard it. A small cry, so soft, almost lost in the sound of wind. The man stopped. He listened, his heart beating fast. Again the sound came. A weak cry like a child calling in the dark. He ran toward it. The path was not easy. Sharp metal blocked his way, but he pushed forward. The cry grew louder, filled with fear. Finally, he reached a broken chamber. There, hidden under a piece of heavy steel, two small figures trembled. His eyes widened. They were not human children. Their skin glowed faintly blue, with lines of silver across their arms. Their eyes were large, bright like stars. They looked weak, hurt, and very afraid. For a moment the man froze. He had never seen anything like them. Were they dangerous? Would they attack him? But then one of them reached out a small hand, shaking. Her voice was broken but clear. "Help," she whispered. The man's heart softened. Whatever they were only children. Without thinking, he pulled away. The heavy steel. It burned his hands, cut his arms, but he did not stop. He dragged it aside and bent down. "Come," he said, trying to sound calm. "I will not hurt you." The girls moved slowly. They were weak, their legs shaking. The man picked them up one by one. They were lighter than human children, almost fragile. He carried them close, feeling their small hearts racing against his chest, but then the forest shook. From the shadows came a low growl. The man turned. Between the trees, red eyes opened, glowing like fire. A creature stepped out, huge and dark, with claws like knives, and teeth sharp as broken glass. It had smelled the blood, it had heard the cries, and now it wanted to feed. The man felt fear rise inside him. He had no weapon strong enough to fight such a beast. He looked at the children. They clung to him, their eyes wide with terror. Knew he could not leave them. He had to run. He sprinted through the forest. The ground shook as the beast followed. Branches snapped, stones broke. The children cried louder, holding his shirt. The man pushed his body harder, faster. He could hear the creature's breath, hot and heavy, right behind him. Up ahead he saw an old cave. Without thinking, he rushed inside. The walls were narrow, sharp rocks cutting his arms as he passed. He went deeper until the path ended in darkness. The growl came again, louder, closer. The beast was outside, its claws scratching against the stone. It could not fit, but it waited, breathing heavy, hungry. The man held the children close. "Quiet," he whispered. The girls covered their mouths, tears shining on their glowing cheeks. For a long moment, nothing moved, only the sound of the monster waiting. Finally, after what felt like forever, the growl faded. The steps moved away. The forest went silent again. The man breathed out, his chest shaking. He looked at the children. They were safe. For now, the girls stared at him, their strange eyes shining in the dark. They did not speak for a long time. Then the younger one whispered a single word. "Mother," she said, before falling asleep in his arms. The older one closed her eyes too, holding his hand tightly. The man sat there in the darkness of the cave, his body tired, his heart heavy. He looked out into the forest, knowing this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, danger was waiting. And somewhere out there, their mother was waiting too. The morning light touched the cave walls. The smoke of last night's crash still floated outside, thin and gray. Birds had returned to the forest. but the air was heavy with silence. The man opened his eyes slowly, his body sore from running and carrying the two small creatures. For a moment he thought it was only a dream, but when he looked down he saw them still there, two alien girls curled close to him. Their strange skin glowing faintly blue in the shadows, he studied them carefully. They were so fragile, their breaths soft, their hands small like tiny sparks of life. He whispered to himself, "What are you, little ones?" The girls stirred but did not wake. He waited, his mind full of questions. Why were they here, alone on this world? Where was their family? And why had no one come for them yet? At last the older girl opened her eyes. They glowed like silver water, bright even in the dim cave. She looked at him with fear at first. Then, with quiet trust, the man reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of bread. He broke it in half and offered it to her. But the girl shook her head. She touched the bread, sniffed it, then pushed it gently away. The younger one woke too, and she did the same. They were hungry, he could see it, but human food was not for them. The man frowned. "How can I feed you?" he whispered. He looked around the cave, nothing but rocks and dust. He knew he had. To leave, had to find something they could eat. But if he left, the creature from the night might return. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his choice. The girls sat together, their small hands touching. And then the strange thing happened. Lines of silver appeared on their arms, glowing like living fire. Symbols, patterns, marks older than any language the man had ever seen. They pulsed with light, as if alive. The man gasped, his eyes wide. "What are you?" he whispered again, this time in awe. The older girl looked at him. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough. "Mother will come," she said. The younger one nodded, whispering the same word, "Mother." The man's heart jumped. If their mother was alive, then maybe others were too. Maybe a whole ship of survivors. But if their mother was coming, why had she not arrived already? Why were the children left alone to cry in the dark? Outside, the forest grew restless. Strange winds shook the trees. The birds flew away in a sudden wave. The man stood quickly, stepping to the mouth of the cave. His eyes searched the sky. At first there was nothing, only clouds and smoke. But then the clouds began to part. A shadow spread across the forest floor, long and heavy. Something huge was coming. The children rose to their feet. Their glowing lines became brighter, almost too bright to look at. They reached out their hands toward the sky. The man followed their gaze, and then he saw it. A ship, not broken like the one from last night. This one was alive with light moving like a great bird of fire. It descended slowly, its shadow swallowing the forest. The sound was deep, like thunder rolling in the earth. The ground shook as it came. Closer, the man stepped back, holding the children behind him. He did not know if this was friend or enemy. All he knew was that it was powerful. The ship landed in the open field beyond the trees. The man's heart pounded. He wanted to run, but the children pulled his hand. They were not afraid, their eyes filled with hope. They whispered again, "Mother." The air shimmered, and the door of the ship opened. A tall figure stepped out. Her body wrapped in shining silver armor. Her skin glowed like the children's, but brighter, stronger. Her eyes were sharp, ancient, and full of fire. She looked across the forest and saw them. Her gaze locked on the man standing with her children. The forest fell silent. The children ran forward. They cried out, their voices filled with joy. "Mother," they shouted, their glowing hands reaching. The figure did not move at first. She only watched, her eyes never leaving the man. The man felt his chest tighten. Would she thank him? Or would she see him as a thief who had taken her children? His hand moved to the small knife at his belt, though he knew it would mean nothing against her power. At last the figure walked forward. The children reached her and wrapped their arms around her legs. She bent down and touched their heads gently. Then, slowly, she raised her eyes again to the man. Her voice carried through the air, low and strange. "You saved them," she said. The man's breath caught. Her eyes glowed, unreadable, and then she spoke again. For this you must receive reward. The forest seemed to tremble at her words. The man did not know if he had been blessed or cursed, but deep inside, he felt that his life had just changed forever. The forest was frozen in silence. The giant ship stood in the clearing like a mountain of light, its surface alive with silver flames that did not burn. The man stood at the mouth of the cave, his body tense, his heart beating fast. The two alien girls clung to their mother's legs, whispering in their strange tongue, their voices filled with relief and joy, but the mother did not smile. Her eyes never left the human, sharp, searching, full of power. The man felt the weight of her stare. He wanted to step back, to hide, but his legs refused to move. He had carried her children through fire. He had risked his life for them. Yet standing before her now, he felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The forest seemed to bow around her, the air itself thick with her presence. Behind her, other figures stepped from the ship, tall, armored, their weapons glowing with strange blue fire. They moved like shadows, surrounding the clearing. The man's hand twitched near the knife at his belt, but he knew it would be useless. These beings were far beyond anything he could fight. The mother raised her hand. The soldiers stopped, waiting. Her voice carried through the clearing, deep and layered, as if more than one voice spoke at once. "You touched them," she said. The man swallowed hard. "Yes," he answered softly. They were alone, they needed help. The children looked up at her, their glowing eyes wide. "Safe," the younger one whispered, pointing at the man. "Safe," echoed the older one. For a moment, the queen's eyes softened, but then she stepped closer. Her shadow fell across him, cold and heavy. She studied his hands, still cut and burned from the wreckage. She studied his eyes, tired but steady. Finally, she bent down and touched the ground with her fingers. The soil burned. Where she touched it, glowing silver, she spoke again, her tone slower now. "You risked death for them," she said. "Few of your kind would do this." The man stayed silent. He did not know if speaking would save him or condemn him. He only looked at the children, who still held her tightly, their small faces full of hope that their mother would see the why. "Truth," the queen straightened. She raised her hand again, and a strange object formed in the air before her. It was a crystal, alive with shifting colors. It pulsed like a beating heart. The soldiers bowed their heads at the sight of it. The man felt the air vibrate, a low hum that filled his bones. "This is reward," she said. Her eyes locked on him. "For saving what no one else could save." The man stepped back, shaking, his head. "I don't need reward," he said quickly. "I only did what was right." The crystal floated closer to him, glowing brighter. The man raised his hands as if to push it away, but the moment he touched it, light exploded across the clearing. The children cried out, not in fear but in wonder. The soldiers stepped back, their eyes wide. The man fell to his knees, his body shaking. The crystal sank into his chest like water, disappearing without a trace. His breath caught. Every nerve in his body burned. He felt the forest around him. Every leaf, every stone, every drop of water. He felt the children's hearts beating. He even felt the queen's sharp gaze piercing his soul. He gasped, clutching his chest. "What have you done to me?" he whispered. The queen's eyes glowed brighter. "The bond has chosen," she said. "You are protector now." The man's head spun, protector. The word felt heavy, as if chains had been locked around his soul. The children smiled and ran to him, holding his hands. They looked at him as if he was part of their family now. He felt their warmth, their trust, but fear rose inside him. He was only a man. He was no warrior, no king, no savior. How could he protect them from dangers he could not even understand? The queen stepped closer once more, her voice softer now, almost gentle. "You carry our mark," she said. "Enemies will come for them and for you." She lifted her hand, pointing at the sky where the stars burned bright. "They will not stop until all is taken." The man swallowed, his chest still glowing faintly where the crystal had entered. He looked at the children, their small faces full of hope. Then he looked at the queen, her eyes sharp, unyielding. His life had changed in one night, and deep in his heart, he knew there was no way back. The forest wind howled through the clearing. The ship loomed above, heavy with silence, and somewhere beyond the trees, the growl of last night's predator echoed once more. The queen turned her head sharply, her voice dropped, low and dangerous. "They have found us." The man's heart raced. Whatever had begun was far from over. The growl echoed through the forest again. It was deep, full of hunger, the sound of something that had been tracking them all along. The man tightened his grip on the two alien children, pulling them closer. The queen raised her hand and her soldiers formed a wall of glowing weapons, their armor shining like fire in the night. The enemy had found them just as she feared. From the shadows, dark shapes moved between the trees. They were not beasts of nature, but living weapons, their bodies twisted with metal and bone, their eyes red with hate. They crawled and slithered, their claws digging into the ground. The forest trembled with their steps. The man's heart pounded. He wanted to run, to hide the children. But the queen's voice stopped him. "Stay close," she said. Her eyes burned with fire. "The bond has chosen you, now it will show you the truth." The glow in his chest grew stronger. The man gasped, clutching at it. Light spread through his veins, crawling into his arms, his hands, his eyes. He fell to his knees, the ground spinning. But then he felt it, power, deep and endless, flowing like a river inside him. The first of the creatures leapt forward. A soldier fired, blue fire bursting from his weapon. The beast fell, screaming. But three more rushed out. The queen's hand glowed, silver lightning crashing into them. The forest burned with light and sound. The children cried, covering their ears. The man stood, his body trembling. He raised his hand without knowing why a blast of light shot from his palm. It struck a beast in midair, throwing it against the rocks with a scream. The soldiers turned, shocked. Even the queen's eyes widened. Just for a moment, the man stared at his own hands, his chest glowing. "Brighter than ever. I didn't mean to," he whispered. The queen's voice cut through the chaos. "You are protector now," she said firmly. "You cannot run from this." The man shook his head. "I never asked for this," he cried. "I only saved them, because they needed help." But the light inside him did not care. It surged again, filling his veins, his heart, his soul. The battle raged around him. The soldiers fought bravely, but more creatures poured from the dark. The queen's power struck like storms, but even she was being pushed back. The man felt the children's small hands clutching his arm. "Safe," they whispered. "Safe." Something inside him broke. He could not let them die. Not after everything. Not while they looked at him with such trust. He raised both hands this time. The light answered, bursting from his chest. A wave of energy swept across the clearing. The ground split. The trees shook. The beasts screamed and fell, crushed by the force. Silence followed. Smoke rose. The smell of burned earth filled the air. The man dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. His body felt heavy, drained, as if the light had stolen all his strength. The soldiers lowered their weapons, staring at him. The queen stepped closer, her eyes unreadable. "You hold more power than I expected," she said slowly. "You are not ordinary anymore." The man shook his head weakly. "I don't want this power," he whispered. "I just want to live my life. Nothing more." But the queen's face hardened. "You don't have a choice," she said. "The crystal has chosen. The bond is complete." She looked at the children who still clung to him. "They trust you now, more than even me." The man's chest ached. He looked at the glowing eyes of the children, at their trembling hands. He had only wanted to keep them safe for one night, but now he was bound to them, to their mother, to their people. His life was no longer his own. The queen raised her hand again. A strange mark appeared on the ground. A circle of silver fire. Inside it, symbols burned, the same as those on the children's skin. She stepped aside, gesturing to him. "This is your path," she said. Step into it, and the bond will complete its shape. The man hesitated. Every part of him wanted to run to escape this fate, but the children's hands held him still. They looked at him with hope, with trust, with love. Slowly, trembling, he stepped into the circle. Light swallowed him whole. Visions flooded his mind. Cities of silver under alien suns, wars fought in endless darkness, guardians who stood between worlds and shadows. He saw himself among them, carrying the same mark that now burned in his chest. The vision ended with a single word echoing in his mind: protector. The light faded. He fell forward, his breath shaking. The Queen's voice came again, low and steady. You are bound to us now, she said. Enemies will come again stronger than tonight. Her eyes locked with his. If you run, they will find you. If you fight, you may save us all. The man closed his eyes. The children held his hands tightly, refusing to let go. And for the first time, he realized the truth. He was no longer just a man, he was something more, and the weight of that truth was heavier than anything he had ever carried. The night was gone, but the man did not feel the sunrise. His body was weak, his chest still glowing with the strange mark. Every breath felt heavy, yet inside him a new fire burned. He touched the ground and felt the heartbeat of the earth, the pull of the trees, the whisper of the wind. It frightened him because it was not human. It was something far greater, something not his own. The Queen stood nearby, silent, her silver armor shining in the faint morning light. Her eyes never left him, as if she was studying every movement he made. The soldiers whispered among themselves, but their voices carried respect and fear. The children sat beside him, holding his hands. They looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, as if he was more than just a man, as if he was already part of their family. He whispered to himself, "What am I becoming?" His hands trembled, light flickering in his skin. The Queen finally spoke, her voice deep and sharp. "You are what the crystal made you," she said, "protector of my bloodline, and shield against the darkness that hunts us." The man shook his head. "I am not a warrior," he said, his voice weak. "I am no king, no soldier, no leader. I am only a man who wanted to help children." But the Queen's gaze hardened. "The bond does not care what you wanted," she said. "It chose you, and now the enemies will come for you as well." As if her words had summoned them, the ground shook. A deep rumble moved through the forest, making the trees bend and break. The children gasped and clung to him tightly. The soldiers raised their weapons, their eyes sharp with fear. The Queen lifted her hand, silver fire building around her. "They are here," she whispered. From beyond the hills, black shapes appeared, not beasts this time, but ships dark and sharp tearing the clouds as they descended. Their engines screamed, shaking the earth. The air filled with the stench of burning metal. The Queen's face grew grim. "They will not stop until they have the bond," she said. "They want the power inside you, they want the children, they want everything." The man's heart raced. He could still feel the power in his chest, but it frightened him. He did not know how to control it last night. It had exploded from him like a storm. What if it hurt the children? What if it destroyed everything? He looked at the girls, their faces full of trust, and he knew he could not let fear hold him. Down, the ships landed, their black doors opening. From the shadows stepped soldiers of another kind, tall and twisted, with armor of bone and steel. Their eyes burned red, their weapons humming with deadly fire. They marched forward in silence. The forest itself seemed to grow colder as they came. The Queen raised her sword of light. Her soldiers formed a line. The man stood in the middle, the children behind him. His body shook, but the bond inside him pulsed stronger with every step the enemy took. The Queen's voice cut through the tension. "Do not fight it," she said, her eyes fixed on him. "Let the bond flow. Let it guide you. Only then will you survive." The enemy charged, their weapons blazing. The Queen struck first, silver lightning flashing across the field. Her soldiers answered with fire, the forest shaking with explosions. The man felt the children press their foreheads against his back. "Safe," they whispered, their voices trembling. Something inside him broke open. He roared, and the light in his chest burst out again. This time he did not resist it. It poured through his arms, his legs, his voice. The ground cracked beneath him. Roots burst from the earth, wrapping around the enemy's legs. A wave of raw energy swept forward, knocking soldiers into the air like leaves. The queen turned her head, her eyes wide. She had expected power, but not this much. The man stumbled, his vision blurring, but the bond held him upright. He could feel the enemy's hatred, their hunger, their endless will to destroy. And he, pushed back. Every strike of their weapons was met with his light. Every step they took was drowned in the force that now lived inside him. But the more he used it, the heavier it became. His body screamed with pain. His blood felt like fire. He fell to one knee, his hands shaking. The children cried out, rapping. Their arms around him, the glow inside him dimmed. For a moment he thought it was over, that the power would consume him before the enemy even could. The queen's voice rang out again. "Stand, protector," she commanded. Her voice carried not anger but strength. "Stand, or they will take everything." The man looked at the children, their tears falling, and he forced himself back to his feet. The bond answered once more. The light blazed brighter than ever. Before the enemy soldiers froze, their red eyes flickering with fear. The queen's army pushed forward, striking them down. The black ships began to retreat, their engines roaring. The forest burned with smoke and light. But the danger faded. The enemy had been driven back. For now, silence fell again, heavy and broken. The man collapsed to his knees, his chest glowing faint but steady. The children hugged him tightly, whispering, "Safe," over and over. The queen stood above him, her eyes sharp, but softer than before. "You are learning," she said, "but this is only the beginning. Greater darkness waits beyond the stars." The man closed his eyes. He could feel it too, waiting, watching. The threat was not over, it had only just begun. The smoke of battle still hung over the forest. The ground was blackened, broken, and scarred with fire. The man sat against a stone, his chest still glowing, faint but steady. The children curled beside him, their small hands gripping his arms as if afraid he would vanish. The queen stood tall, her silver armor shining with cracks and burns. Her eyes were fixed on the sky, sharp and unblinking. The soldiers whispered in their strange tongue, voices heavy with fear. They knew the fight was not finished. The enemy had fled, but not in defeat. It was only a pause, a retreat before the storm returned. The man could feel it too. The bond inside him pulsed, warning of greater danger. He turned to the queen, his voice rough. "They will come back," he said. "They will not stop until they take the children." The queen nodded slowly. "They are the last of my bloodline," she whispered. "They are heir to my throne, heir to power the enemy has hunted for centuries." The man's breath caught. He looked at the girls, their innocent faces glowing softly in the dim light. He had thought of them as lost children, but now he realized they were more, far more. They were keys to something greater, and that made them targets for every monster in the dark. The ground shook again. From the trees came the sound of drums, deep and endless. The queen's soldiers raised their weapons, their eyes sharp with fear. The children pressed closer to the man, their whispers trembled against his chest. "Safe," they said, though their voices shook. "Safe." The man clenched his fists. He could feel the bond burning hotter. The queen looked at him, her voice calm but urgent. "You must lead them now," she said. "They trust you, and the bond listens to your will, not mine." The man shook his head quickly. "I am not a leader," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to guide soldiers. I don't even know how to control this power." But the queen's eyes did not soften. "You will learn, or they will all die," she said. The drums grew louder. Dark shapes filled the horizon. Not dozens, but hundreds. Ships landed like falling stars, black and sharp. The enemy poured out in waves, soldiers, beasts, machines twisted by shadow. The forest shook as their army spread. The queen's soldiers tightened their line. The man stood slowly, his body trembling but his eyes steady. The children clung to him, their glowing marks pulsing brighter. The bond inside him roared like a storm. The enemy charged. The queen raised her blade. Her army met the first wave. Light clashed with fire. Steel clashed with bone. The night became chaos. The man stood in the center, the children behind him. He lifted his hands and the bond exploded outward. A shield of light rose around them, bright as the sun. Enemy fire struck but broke against it. The children gasped, pressing their hands to the shield. Their own glowing marks merged with his, making it stronger. The queen fought like thunder, her blade cutting through the enemy, but the army was endless, wave after wave. The man knew if he only defended, they would all be crushed. He stepped forward, the bond burning through his veins. He pushed his hand out, and a blast of light shot across the battlefield. Dozens of enemies fell, screaming. The soldiers cheered, hope flashing. In their voices, for the first time, they saw victory as possible. But the enemy was not foolish. From the sky came larger shadows, machines that walked on 4 legs, each the size of a tower. They fired beams of red fire, burning the forest, tearing through soldiers. The queen staggered, her armor breaking. The man looked at the children, their eyes full of fear. "I will not let you lose her again," he whispered. The bond answered his promise, flooding him with light. He leapt forward, his body moving faster than thought. Energy wrapped around him like armor. The giant machines turned their weapons on him, but he struck first, a beam of pure light bursting from his chest. The machines cracked, shattered, and fell. The battlefield shook with their destruction. The enemy roared in anger, their lines. Pressing harder, the man staggered, his strength fading. But the children reached out from behind, touching his back. Their voices rose in unison. "Safe!" they cried. The bond surged brighter, their light merging with his. Together they stood as one, and the enemy fell back in fear. At last the queen raised her sword high. Her army struck with renewed fire. The enemy began to retreat, their ships pulling away. The drums faded, leaving only silence and smoke. The forest was ruined, the ground covered in ash, but the children still breathed. The queen still stood, and the man still lived. The queen looked at him, her voice quiet but strong. "You carry more than power now," she said. "You carry their hope and mine." The man's chest burned with the weight of her words. He looked at the children, their glowing faces resting against him, and he knew the war was not over. It was only beginning. The battlefield lay silent. Smoke drifted through the broken trees. The air was heavy with the smell of fire and blood. The man stood among the ruins, his body weak, his chest still glowing faintly. The children clung to his side, their small hands gripping him as if he was their only shield. The queen walked slowly, her silver armor cracked, her face pale but unbroken. The enemy had retreated, but the man knew it was not victory, it was only a delay. They would return with greater strength, hungrier than before. He felt it in the bond, the endless shadow waiting beyond the stars. For now, there was quiet. But soon, the war would rise. Again, the soldiers gathered, their eyes on him. They did not look at the queen first. They looked at him, the protector chosen by the crystal, the man who had turned the tide. He wanted to tell them he was only a traveler, only a man, but their gazes carried hope and he could not tear it away. The queen stepped closer, her voice steady though soft. "You have carried more than I asked of you," she said. "You saved my children. You saved my bloodline. You saved my people." Her eyes burned into his. "And now you must decide, human, where you belong." The words cut deep into him. He looked at the children, their glowing eyes filled with love and trust. He had held them in the fire, carried them through the night, fought against monsters and armies for them. He had become part of them, even without meaning to. But then he thought of his own world, the small life he had left behind, simple and quiet, a life without war, without power, without destiny. The queen lifted her hand. The silver ship behind her opened, glowing with light. "If you come with us," she said, "you will live as one of us. You will protect the heirs. You will carry the bond across the stars." Her voice softened, You will never be alone. You will have family. You will have purpose. The man's heart tightened. Family. It was something he had not felt for a long time, but he also knew the cost. He would leave behind the world he was born to. He would leave behind his people, his home, everything familiar. He would never return. The children tugged on his hands, their voices small. "Stay," whispered the younger one. "Safe," added the older. Their glowing marks pulsed with his, the bond growing warmer. He could feel their hearts beating, steady and strong. They had chosen him as family. Without question, without hesitation, the man closed his eyes. He thought of the nights of silence on his own world, the empty roads, the cold meals, the endless days of wandering without purpose. He thought of the children's cries in the wreck, their small voices begging for help. He thought of the moment they whispered, "Safe," into his chest. And he knew the truth. He opened his eyes, his voice firm. "I will stay," he said. The Queen's eyes narrowed, searching for weakness, but she found none. "You understand what you give up?" she asked. The man nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "I give up my world, but I gain something greater." He looked at the children, their faces glowing with joy. "I gain them," the Queen bowed her. Head slightly, her soldiers dropped to one knee. The man felt the weight of it, heavier than any battle. He was no longer only a man. He was protector, chosen and bound. The bond pulsed brighter, filling him with strength and calm. For the first time, he accepted it. The children hugged him tightly, their voices echoing with, "Joy? Safe?" they whispered again and again, the word no longer a plea but a promise. The Queen lifted her hand, silver light swirling around them. The ship roared as its engines came alive. The forest shook, the stars above calling. A new path stretched before him, endless and unknown. As they stepped toward the ship, the man looked back once. The forest burned, the ruins still smoked. It was the end of one life, and the beginning of another, he whispered to himself. Not just a man anymore, his voice carried through the night. Protector. The ship rose, silver flames wrapping around it. The children pressed their glowing hands against the window, watching the world fade below. The Queen stood tall beside him, her eyes sharp yet proud. The man placed his hand over his chest, feeling the bond burning strong, and for the first time he did not fear it. He embraced it. Above the clouds, the stars opened wide, endless and waiting. The war was not finished, but neither was hope. And in the silence of space, one truth remained. The children were safe, and he would keep them safe always.